Hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and I've had to completely rewrite the script for this video based on yet another corporate decision from Games Workshop. I had intended to show this, the Cadian Command squad, which contains the highest density of Games Workshop brand options for the Imperial Guard, except for the Cadian Command squad, as I've been making video after video about the Tanith first and only, nicknamed the Gaunt's Ghosts. You would probably expect me to be using these pieces to make ghosts for my steadily growing force, and that's exactly my intention. I will show most of the parts in the set and comment on how they can be applied to making Gaunt's Ghost models by combining them with third-party parts, either resin cast or 3D printed. And these parts, designed, produced and sold by other companies, are far more important to us hobbyists. Games Workshop may be the biggest tabletop wargame model company in the market, but they are only one company. Their range might be the biggest, but it's still quite limited. But before I climb that hill, and as I've recorded all of this footage, I really should use it. So let's take a look at the Cadian Command squad and how these parts relate to the Tanith. Starting with the most boring and basic pieces, there are legs. 4 of them are very similar to the other Cadian kits. The 5th, it has a longer tunic for the officer. Torsos are similar, with 4 identical to the other sets. I find this very interesting because every single torso in the other sets and these 4 are identically sculpted. And that leaves 3, yes 3, because you get some spare torsos, and 2 of them are the exact same as the bog standard, except they have a little Aquila panel. Wow. And the last one is this posh one with medals for the officer. Then there's heads, most are wearing the same helmets as the Cadian infantry, but have at least some extra details. Glasses, cigar, there's one with an officer's cap and some scarred faces as well. But that's all of the boring stuff. Oh wait, no, there's the flags. The most boring part in the entire set are these flags. Who uses flags? I don't know, I've never seen a flag being used. Right, so that's all the boring stuff done. Let's look at the cool weapon options. First, most important and most relevant to the ghost model makers like me is this. 2 pieces for the sniper's rifle, including a cloak. This is the only plastic cloak in the entire Imperial Guard line from Games Workshop, and so I had to include it in a video at some point. Flamers are next, a flamer and a heavy flamer. Excellent options, but only 1 tank to go with them. I'll have to kitbash some third-party piece to complete both of them. Interestingly, the standard flamer is from the same basic sculpts as the infantry flamers, but has some extra detail on the arms and shoulder, making it a little more interesting. It took a moment to find the corresponding arm for the heavy flamer, as it's not listed correctly in the instructions, but it's this one off by the flag. The only character you'd want a heavy flamer with is of course Brostin. There's also Melter, Plasma and Grenade Launcher, only 1 supporting left arm here, and all of them have fancy shoulder pads, but these are weapons that the Tanith don't use and so are more likely to be cut off, and I can use the arms with some other kitbash. There's also a variety of smaller weapons for the officers, some will get used, some won't. One I will point out specifically is the bionic arm with the sword. This is a sought after piece for ghost makers like myself, 1 specific character, Sergeant Varl, and his augmetic shoulder. More arm options for the specialists. Officers and grunts include a pointy arm, a map, medic's arms that will go to the character Lesp, and comms for Beltane. There's also some other bits, tassels for the flag, gas masks, as well as really boring standard accessories that are duplicated from the infantry squad box. One last thing is a servo skull, and a nice one too. Not directly relevant to the ghosts, but is a part that I will find a use for. Does this count as its own model? Is this a 6 model set? Well, now that I've clipped all of the bits off the sprue and filed that away in the most important place, let's build some models, and straight away I reach for some all-important unofficial parts. When I smash an indicator stalk off of my Yamaha bike, I don't buy a Yamaha brand replacement. 12 years ago, when I got this Warrior Assault Systems rucksack, I immediately found some other pouches to carry all of the useful bits I needed quick access to, like the sunglasses for when I'm riding. And when I go all try-hard with my Nerf guns, you best be sure not all of that plastic went through a Hasbro factory. And that same logic follows to me when I glue my Warhammers together, because the official models just aren't what I'm after. They don't really represent the goal very well, the Tanith first and only. Of particular importance is the cloaks. As I mentioned before, there is one plastic Imperial Guard cloak, and it happens to be in this kit for the sniper. There's also metal snipers that also have cloaks. That's not exactly army material, £5 a model and only having snipers. So I've got a collection of other cloaks, from Victoria Miniatures and Anvil Industries that I'll be doing videos on soon, as well as the 3D printed stuff from Devik Designs that I reviewed a few months back. But not just the required parts, I'm doing some aesthetic replacements as well to make this army look all the more interesting. The Cadian legs are, honestly, dorky. I much prefer the Catachin legs, and also the fatigue legs from Victoria Miniatures, but my favourite is the petite legs from Anvil. I'm steadily working on a ghost cosplay, and one of the things I'm somewhat obsessed with is getting myself some green petites. But also for the models, painting them in green breaks up the black uniform without painting the boots brown, which would just disappear into a brown base. It's not to say that these parts have to be from other companies. I do actually have a long history of buying Games Workshop's plastic, and like a dragon of that plastic, I have hoarded it all. I actually do even have a dragon. It's broken, so it'll need some pieces to fix. Third-party pieces, probably. The culmination of this hoard of bits is a whole bunch of conversion opportunities, and I don't think twice before grabbing a Bretonnian head to put on this Cadian torso, or switching out a hand or adding a knife to a belt. I particularly like having beret-wearing heads mixed into my ghosts, and the Devik Designs heads are great for that, but I also went a little crazy on some leftover bits on eBay. This is someone's leftover sprue, and as the saying goes, one model maker's scrap is another's greatest desire. They are from the Games Workshop Scion kit, and the seller probably made theirs with the helmeted heads included in the set, and so the leftover beret heads went to me for my ghosts. But that's not the only sprue of unwanted parts that I wanted, and I've had to stop myself before I nickel and dime my way into homelessness. Well, let's have a look at some of the models that you can make from the Command kit and the other sets that I've been looking at. Obviously, first up is that sniper, and I've put some Victoria Miniatures legs and bayonet to cement the Tanith look, but I've also used one of the Scion beret heads. However, there's one big issue with that cloak and the way that it's split. Games Workshop is terrible at splitting parts like this to put on sprue, and it's only getting worse with the recent Sisters of Battle and Stormcast models. Here is Varl with the bionic arm, last pistol arm from the infantry sprue just to give me the right balance of pose, and the Victoria Miniatures cloak and bayonet. And the torso and legs is from yet another leftover sprue, this time one of the vehicle upgrade sprues. Medic! The model that I will use to represent Orderly Lesp is pretty much all from the Command sprue, kneeling legs, medic parts, but with the Devik Designs torso and cloak. I have found some difficulty in finding cloaks that work with the kneeling legs, and Devik's work perfectly. This is a wounded guardsman who I will eventually paint up in the Volpone scheme to match the one I did in my last video. This is to remember the sequence in one of the books where Doc Dorden stays behind to look after some wounded soldiers. Most of this again is from the Command sprue, but the head is a Bretonnian peasant head with a bandage, and the base is 3D printed of my own design. The flamer I mentioned again has the Victoria legs and a Bretonnian knight head, which is very similar to the last flamer I built, which has Victoria Miniatures legs and a wood elf hooded head, which when I sculpt in a cloak will look pretty good, I hope. The heavy flamer, the officer, and all of the other bits are getting filed away neatly in my bits box and will eventually feature in future videos. I'll just put a quick bit of Milliput on these models, firstly to seal up that horrible gap in the sniper's cloak, but also to connect Varl's cloak around his chest. Just about any model maker will use some form of modelling clay at some point. Milliput, green stuff, there's dozens of different ones, and they do behave differently. I am fond of Milliput, but I'm not tied to it. Most of this time the different types of clay will be used to do exactly this, just gap filling. And that's just fine. It's a tool, a supply, and it's useful for gap filling. However, there's a lot more that can be done. After weeks of practice, I can just about get a fully sculpted cloak to look good, which is a length of time that most wargamers don't have to spend on what is an ancillary skill. So by permitting sculptors to use their not made by Games Workshop sculpts, but denying other model makers from not being able to buy not Games Workshop sculpts, is more than a little bit elitist. Adding to other elitist rules like you have to have painted your toy soldiers before you can play with us, Games Workshop is really spreading some unpleasant ideas around the community. Ideas that could be called dangerous, or perhaps toxic in millennial speak. And who do these rules benefit? I can sculpt, I can paint quite well, or at least I think I can paint quite well, and I like painting and sculpting. But these rules don't benefit me. I'll happily play against someone with an unpainted, barely glued together army. It doesn't benefit new players or model makers either, who get the Games Workshop blinkers put on as soon as they join the hobby and don't learn the wonderful selection of options that exist, greatly limiting the potential because of the resources that they are aware of. It also doesn't help older hobbyists who have collected all sorts of cool bits. It doesn't help hobby shops who end up stocking something else on their shelves. And it doesn't help gaming groups who are trying to get rid of the toxic elitists who now have been given a platform of false legitimacy. Well, just before I wrap up and show the models that I have completed today, I'd like to dismantle some of the counter-arguments. Firstly, the argument Games Workshop is a company as an excuse to how they're damaging the hobby. This is not a reason, and it's not much of an excuse. Rather, it is a statement proving guilt. They're a company who do not have our best interest at heart. They have been extremely successful in the last few years and yet still only want more. Secondly is the idea that these rules only apply in certain places and who cares. Except that they don't. These rules already extend to many Games Workshop locations and have been introduced in independent gaming stores. These decisions are steps, and they are steps in the wrong direction, and they are not alone. One step implies other steps, and there will be more. Speak out now, or you'll lose a lot of what the hobby is, and while I'm sure most of you have gone from this video, I had to speak out. Well, that's all very dreary and soapboxy, so let's have a look instead at the models that I have completed today. Now, I haven't painted all 5, in fact, I haven't even built as many models as I can make using these parts, but I have painted 3. The Sniper, who I haven't chosen a name for, Sergeant Val with the bionic arm, and Orderly Lesp, who looks like he's sneezing more than he's medicing. 3 more models completed and ready for the gaming table, just not in a Warhammer shop. Thanks to anyone who has survived this far into the video. The comment section is of course open for discussion. Keep it civil, I know that this one's probably going to get a little heated. I have really enjoyed the comment section on my recent videos. There's lots of good discussions and questions, and thank you all, and please keep up that vibe. On your way past, there is a description box to look at all the other stuff that I get up to, including a donation link to keep me going. And with all of that said, I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.